life wasn't good. My mom was an alcoholic. She got into drugs. Around that point, we were sent to go live with our great grandparents. And then that's when things kind of got out of control, where me, my brother, and my sister, we were molested by a great uncle. From there, just I became that rebel. One time, we had to go to a banquet. I was sitting next to him. I got tired, and everybody's at the table. It was a round table, and he just grabbed my head and just like, "Oh, you lay down," and then put my head like right in his crotch area. Another time, my great grandparents had guests over the house. They had to sleep in our room. My grandma said, "Go sleep with your uncle." And so I went in there, and I could remember walking in up in the middle of the night because someone was pulling my pants down. I was 21 when I confronted him. I threw him down the flights of stairs. I got a shovel, and I hit him with it about 3 or 4 times. Got arrested, went to trial, it was a 3-year trial, and to come to find out, he wasn't just doing it to us. He was wanted in LA County. He was wanted in the state of Oklahoma for doing the exact same thing. I got into therapy. The therapist told me that I had blocked so much of it out, and then they started bringing it up, and it just awoken something inside of me because I started really going in a dark area too. I wasn't fully healed, and that took me down, drinking and womanizing. I just did a lot of self-sabotage in any good relationship I was in because I didn't feel like I deserved to be in a good relationship. I was broken, I couldn't be fixed. I know one time they did hypnosis on me. Don't know what happened, but during that session, she said that's where a lot of the trauma came out. I just know it was reported to the court, and that's kind of what made the court lean more on my side. Even to this day, I don't know the full extent of what was said. That part of the case was just sealed. My trauma will not define me. If one person could heal from it, then my job is done. I was born in Santa Ana, California, raised all over. My mom, how do I say this? Every 6 months she wanted to move. So it's like, it was kind of difficult because moving for me, me and my siblings was difficult because every 6 months we're in a new school, or every year we're in a different school. Home life wasn't good. Mom was an alcoholic. She got into drugs. Um, Around that point, we were sent to go live with our great grandparents, and then that's when things kind of got out of control. Where uh, me and my brother, and my sister, we were molested by a great uncle, and then that kind of just from there, just I became that rebel kid, just doing everything bad. I played a role that the family gave me. So if I was a bad seed, I played the bad seed too, the best way I could, you know, getting in trouble at school, getting suspended. I didn't know until I'll say in high school because I kept having these weird dreams in foster home, group home. And during that time, they sent me to a therapist who kind of unraveled everything for me. Like, you were molested, that's why you're having these types of dreams. So it just, and I kind of figured like this great uncle, I didn't like being around him. I just didn't know why. Then come to find out that's what it was.
You mentioned that your mom was moving around a lot and you were all, as a family, moving together with her. And obviously that kind of creates a very unstable childhood. And every time you started to get kind of comfortable in your space, you guys were up and out. Was the reason for moving because of relationships that she was getting into, or because her work was requiring her to move, or was it just a personal choice of hers?
I would say it was a different relationship. Our mother always put men above the kids. So men were more important than our own welfare. I can't even tell you how many times I was told to call someone stepdad, or how many times men were coming in and out the house. So it's just like very, very, it wasn't stable, but at the same time, it was kind of no, that's what I knew.
What about your birth dad?
I have never met him. There's stories that go around that the day I was born, he was at the hospital, he held me, then left. And then by the time I was 22 years old, then he finally wrote me a letter explaining everything. So his explanation was him and my mom didn't get along. I wrote him back saying it didn't matter if you guys didn't get along. You and her getting along has nothing to do with you being my father. And then that I wrote him back, and that was it. And I told him I'm good. I'm 22 years old. At the time, I was angry, so I told him, "What can you teach me now. You never roll back.
I wonder what that sort of did to you and your siblings for in terms of that feeling of being wanted. I think one of the most important things for a child is to feel wanted by their parents. When you don't have that from your parents at a time when you need someone the most and you're being neglected time and time again, what kind of did that do for you and your siblings? Did you three bond as siblings, and did you kind of find that in each other, or were you also pretty isolated from your siblings?
Well, we got along pretty good. My other two siblings, they have the same dad, so their dad was constantly in their life, and then he would be there for me. So my last name is actually his last name. So that's how they kind of included me in everything. I didn't know at the time. For all the way until I was 18, it was kind of a cycle of lies. So when I became 18, graduated high school, joined the army, I had to go get my birth certificate. That's how I found out who my real dad was. So it was one of those things. My mom, you should have told me. You chose not to tell me. And then like we have a non-existent relationship right now because like I can't have someone in my life that's going to constantly lie. I have my own kids. I can't have you be around my kids if you can't be honest with me. It's like like I told my mom, you have never been honest with me. With my siblings, they've had that relationship with their dad, and I had that relationship with my stepdad, but it was different. And you could tell it was different. I knew something was different about us three because I came out a little bit darker. They have the same complexion. There was something not right there, but as a kid, you don't question it. Someone tells you something, just go with what the adult says.
It's like you've spent 18 years of your life kind of questioning it, and you're listening. You have moments where your gut is telling you something else, but then at the same time you're being told on the outside that no, this is like better not to ask questions. I can imagine that being really difficult for you.
Yeah, it was. It was a shock. I'll say the minute I joined the military was that minute that I just kind of disappeared. I think it was a good, I don't know, 3 or 4 years that I didn't talk to anybody in the family. I just needed that myself time. Just kind of like off the grid. Nobody knew anything until I called. And my mind is like, you could say you love someone, and for 18 years I was lied to, and then this is what you're showing me love is. And then I get into foster care, foster home. I see love as a different thing. So it's like, do I want that toxic love, or do I want someone to be genuine and real with me?
Now, you talked about like your mom then eventually sending you off to your grandparents. Was there any reason for this?
She had no choice. She had got arrested for drug possession. So we went to live with our great grandparents. No, I can honestly say that that was a good portion of my life because it was stability and it was structure. Like my great grandpa, Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, wake me and my brother up, let's go. He would take us to work with him. So it kind of that kind of started developing the work ethic and stuff in me, the discipline. So that was a good time in my life. And then, my great grandma would just, you know, she would cook for us, and then during sometimes we'll all sit down and then they'll just pour words of wisdom into us.
Do you feel like that's the thing that kind of set that foundation a little bit for you to sort of even overcome and go through that healing process, like those kind of, little lessons that you were being injected with at the time?
Yes, it does, because even to this day, I still think about those lessons. I tell my kids those lessons.
How old were you when the three of you were sent?
I was in either the second or third grade.
Okay, so fairly
So
young. How does your grandfather, your great grand uncle, sort of fit into this picture? Was he living with them at the time?
yes, he was. So my great uncle is my great grandmother's brother. So he had his own room in the house. So he stayed with them.
And at the time, he wasn't working or doing.
No, at the time he wasn't working. He was a retired Vietnam veteran. He had got shell shock, was injured, so he had 100% disability. He would travel from Orange County, California, to LA County, and then he would go to other states too. So we would see him for a week, and then probably won't see him again for the next month. But that was his thing. But come to find out, there's more to why he did what he did, like why you only seen him certain times.
What was that?
I was 21 when I confronted him, and I threw him down the flights of stairs. I got a shovel and I hit him with it about 3 or 4 times. Got arrested, went to trial. It was a 3-year trial, and they come to find out, like the reason he was gone for like weeks at a time because he wasn't just doing it to us. he was wanted in LA County. He was wanted in the state of Oklahoma for doing the exact same thing.
And his target was always little kids.
Yes, and it was always kids in the family. Well, I don't want to say he was smart enough, but he had enough sense to know not to mess with kids from a like, I don't know.
So they were always like his siblings, children, or,
Yeah,
cousins, children's. Did he have children of his own?
no, he didn't. No children. He was never married.
Do you think that this was sort of something that developed post military, post war, post, like a sign of like PTSD or something? Or is this something that he always had in him?
I can't really say because I don't know how he was before the war. And when we asked my great grandma before she passed, she would never say nothing. So I don't know if she knew and she didn't say nothing, or she doesn't want to remember her brother in that light.
And the fact that he was a wanted person means that there were a lot of other people, family members, who had actually reported him. Why did he never really get caught?
The reason you said, because there were other family members that were willing to hide him. At one point, he did go for like a month and a half and flew out to other family members that we knew out in Arkansas. And so there were family members who wanted him arrested, but then there's at that same time there's other family members who thought us kids was making it up and they were protecting him. So that's why it went on for like, I think if I remember correctly, my paperwork said is they could go back at almost 10 years. But I think it's way longer than 10 years because I was 22 when I confronted him. And at the time I was living at the house, it was like 7. So that's at least 15 years. But the state of California only went back 10 years.
You mentioned that this was also going on with your siblings, so this was something that was kind of like happening at home, with all of you. And was it ever something that the three of you ever discussed about or kind of knew about?
No, we didn't discuss until later on as we got older. And then I was the one who brought it up. And then once I brought it up, my brother and sister kind of had similar incidents. And then we started talking to other cousins. Like someone was saying they just didn't feel right around him. Other aunts and uncles, I think they knew because they wouldn't let their kids around him. Like, why you not let your kids around someone if you don't know what's going on? Her mother said that something that happened with her and him. Like, when did he do it to you? Before the war or after he got home?
Yeah, that sort of puts things into a certain timeline. If he was kind of doing this with your mother as well when she was younger, then it's been going on for a really, really long time. Can you tell me a little bit more about like sort of the extent of how he was going about it and what he was doing? I mean, I know that you and your siblings all were living under the same roof at this time. He managed to do it sort of secretly in a way that none of you were aware of each other situation. Can you just like, if you can remember or recall, like how was he going about this sort of like at the time?
He, so he would do things innocently, like, and he would do it around other people where nobody else caught on. Like, okay, so one time, uh, we had to go to a banquet, and I was sitting next to him. I got tired, and everybody's at the table. It was a round table, and he just grabbed my head and just like, oh, you lay down, and then put my head like right in his crotch area. I was like, that was so uncomfortable. I just put my head back up, and then there was another time where my great grandparents had guests over the house. They had to sleep in our room. And at this time, my brother was living. My other grandma had took my brother in, so he was living in Oakland, California. So I was there. My grandma said, "Go sleep with your uncle." And so I went in there, and I could remember waking in up in the middle of the night because someone was pulling my pants down. And it's just like I remember just closing my eyes real tight, just thinking it was a bad dream. And it's funny because talking about it now, it's like I knew something happened that night, and I had said something to my great grandma, and she had asked him about it, and he's like, no, he was probably dreaming. I wouldn't do that. So it made me think, did I imagine it or was it real?
You're kind of being gaslit into thinking that nothing actually happened. And so you're questioning yourself. You're questioning the whole situation around you. The adults are kind of, you're always told that, adults are the ones, they're right, they're older, they're wiser, you have to listen to them. And so when you're being told this, you're kind of like fighting against your own gut, and you're also doing it all alone. And it's your word versus your great grand uncle. Do you recall all of it, or did you at some point sort of bury those memories and try to just push it away? How were you managing? How were you dealing with it?
So once I got to the group home and I got into therapy, The therapist told me that I had blocked so much of it out. And then like going to therapy, they started bringing it up and it just awoken something inside of me. Because I started really going in a dark area too. Before that, I was doing fine, managing school, getting good grades and all that. Then I just started going to that dark area because everything just starts to come back.
And you mentioned that like before you were even sent to that group home, you started rebelling a lot. What did that look like?
If I got grounded or something and I wasn't supposed to do something, I would just do it anyway. My grandparents were old school, so it's like there's a lot of old school values. Like you can't have a girl over the house. At an early age, I was into girls. Like second grade, I was already into girls, so it's like kissing girls and all that stuff. So it's just like, again, I didn't know why that was. Later on, I found out because of what I went through. So my body wanted something that I didn't know it wanted.
When you're being told for so long to suppress emotions, boys don't cry, that the way of dealing with pain for young guys growing up is often to kind of turn to violence, to turn to aggression, to turn to drugs, to be angry instead of feel the emotion. Would you agree that that sort of was the situation for you as well?
Yes, because my great grandparents grew up and they were part of the civil rights movement, all that era. My grandpa said you have to be tough. You get in the fight, don't come home if you lose. That's what it was told to me and my brother. So it's just, if someone picks on you, you gotta fight. Someone calls you a name, you gotta fight. That's what I learned. That's the era I grew up in. Like it was that kind of tough love. It's what they were taught from their parents. My grandparents tell this. My mother got locked up for drugs. The first thing they said is like, she had no business doing drugs. If she went in, came out, got caught for stealing. She had no business stealing. She's going to do her time. We're not bailing her out. We're not getting her a lawyer. She did the crime. She's going to do the time. I think that's a good philosophy. You do the crime, you got to do the time.
That's a really interesting sort of like irony in a sense, because your great grandfather, on the one hand, is encouraging you to fight your case. But at the same time, it's like, well, if you get caught, if you get in trouble, well, then you're going to have to do your time and no one's going to bail you out. And let's just add on to the fact that you've gone through something so tragic and you've got this anger inside of you. You're already angry about everything. You haven't had an outlet to get it out. And now you are in this kind of situation where you're almost encouraged to get into a fight. Did you ever find yourself getting mixed up with the police at any point?
Not until like after 18. From the time I was elementary until I graduated, no. No, I never
Okay.
had any encounter. Yeah, I was a rebel. I did all this stuff. I no juvie, no nothing. I thank God for that.
And you mentioned that you did join the military at the age of 18, right?
Yes, yes, I did.
So you're kind of in this position where you still haven't really figured out what really is going on. You're having these dreams, which I do want to talk a little bit more about, but you've joined the military and at the same time you're also, you know, engaging in violence.
Yes, I think so. I was still in the military in 1999. So in 1999, this is when the incident happened with my great uncle. And then from 1999 all the way to 2002 is when me going to trial, fighting the case. Just something happened during those 3 years where everything just turned around for me. It was the support to the military, the support of other people, and if there are people, if I fall, they're there to lift me up, and that's kind of what set me on that right path. Even after 2002, I wasn't fully healed, and that took me down, drinking and womanizing. That was my next stage where I
Phase.
just did a lot of self-sabotage in any good relationship I was in because I didn't feel like I deserved to be in a good relationship. I was broken. I couldn't be fixed.
Right. What was this incident that happened with your grandfather that kind of led to this court case? I know you mentioned that you kind of confronted your grandfather. What actually happened?
My sister had called me and told me that our great uncle had tried to go in the bathroom with my little niece. The next day, about 6 in the morning, I went to his house. He came out the back door and he looked me in the eye. I looked him in the eye and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I looked him straight in the eye. I said, "I know what you did to me." The next thing he said is, "I don't want no trouble." So to me, that was an admission. I don't want no trouble. Everything was just so built up inside of me at that point. Like, okay, I know you did it to me. There's no way you're gonna do it to my little niece. He put his hand on my shoulder And then next thing I know, I just grabbed him, threw him down some stairs, walked to the rest of the backyard, got a shovel, and hit him about 3 or 4 times with the shovel, and left. And to tell you the truth, the only reason I could recount this to you because I literally have to read the court paperwork because if I don't read court, I don't remember what happened. And I remember the day I got arrested, the cops told me uh, you had something they call blind rage. I remember being there, but I don't remember what happened after that. I remember leaving, but yeah.
Until
So it's
today,
like
you're not speaking out of memory. You're speaking from.
from the paper, yeah, because I
Okay.
can't, and that's his recollection of it. Like he tells the story, like, yeah, we had that conversation and he threw me and then he started, his recollection, I started beating him with the shovel. And so after that happened, I left and he started screaming. My great grandma came out. He told her what happened. They called 911, called the ambulance. And this is where everything takes a turn. So when the ambulance gets there, the ambulance asks him, "Sir, do you want to go to the hospital? Do you want to get checked out?" He says no. So it gets me off the case for murder or manslaughter or anything. 2 weeks after this incident, he goes into the hospital. His back's hurting. He dies on the operating table because he catches pneumonia. And then that's the only reason I got charged because he wouldn't have back problems if I didn't hit him with the shovel. Then my lawyer said, well, he refused the medical treatment. Now, if he would have accepted it, you can make a case. The one thing I do recall is that I was calm throughout. I know when I left, I know even when I got arrested, my great grandma's words came back to me: "You do the crime, you do the time." So I had confessed, and we get to the courthouse. We talk to the officer who arrested me. He said he never made a confession. So it was just like one of those things. Even though I did confess to the officer, he just because he asked me what happened, why did I do it, and I told him. He's like, no. When he charged me with a special charge called corporal punishment because I was still in the military at the time. So it's like he's trained to do that. So I had a special charge on me just for being in the military. When I got arrested, I wasn't scared. I think I was more at peace. And it was more peace because I knew he was dead. No other kids were going to lose their innocence. And at that time, I was willing to do the time. And my lawyer said, no, we have a good case. You have mentioned this before. There's a timeline, and nobody believed you. So he said, we're gonna fight this, and that's kind of what happened.
I don't think I've ever heard of a case or a situation where someone has actually hurt someone. Yeah, like the courts have kind of taken his side, given everything, given the circumstances, given like the whole way this manifested was in a way that kind of cleared you. And the fact that there was no charge for attempted murder or any of that. But in a way, I'm so glad that it kind of worked out in your favor because, yes, what you did would by law be considered an act of assault, but at the same time with reason. And I think it's kind of one of the situations where the police understood your situation, the lawyers understood your situation, and everyone sort of came together for almost like for something bigger than just that particular situation itself.
Yeah, and I remember so what they did charge me with was elderly abuse because he was over the age of 70. So I got charged with elderly abuse, and when I got sentenced, they gave me 3 years probation. That was it. And I still remember to this day that the judge looked at me and he's like, he kind of gave me a warning. He's like, I don't want to ever see you here again. And he's like, Mr. Frazier, please, no more vigilante stuff. Let the cops do their job. So, and the funny thing
Wow.
is, that happened. So that was 2002. We're in 2025. Me and that judge still keeps in contact with each other.
Even you like listening to that, like hearing that, kind of getting a certain validation, getting a sense of kind of like, okay, like they hear me, they hear me. Like I'm feeling heard and validated at this point.
Yeah, it felt refreshing. Even on the district attorney side, the one who was prosecuting me, we had a private conversation, and she even told me, she's like, you have never changed your story. You have told the same story for 3 years. And she's like, I feel so bad that we had to prosecute you. We wasted money. She said, it wasn't me, it's my boss. Even, the whole office is like, what person keeps the same story for 3 years? You usually find holes in it. And she's like, and she was sad that they for 3 years like we kept going through this, getting continuation, postponing it. And she's like, you never changed your story. You stuck to your guns. When we talk to other people, everybody's story is starting to sound different now. It's like, and they started to notice that people were covering up for him, so other people knew what he was doing. And I love what the judge said, but I also love what the district attorney said, because she said like, you never changed. You stood on your same principles from the beginning. Your story never changed for 3 years.
That's actually really, really useful for anyone that's kind of gone through any kind of, abuse or sexual trauma or anything as such where they're, required to go to court. Being consistent with your story makes you more believable in a sense, right? Like it kind of
Yes.
validates what you're really there fighting for. Whereas if you're consistently changing, which I understand it does happen as well, with time people kind of lose bits and pieces of the story or remember other bits and pieces of the story. But what that does is that kind of it makes you sound very flip floppy, and then it kind of doesn't hold up in court as well. I know you mentioned that for you, your bits and pieces of your kind of memory were coming to light later on in your life. So you're also probably realizing, recognizing, learning little bits of like what actually happened to you at the time, but still maintaining that consistency in court.
Yes. So I guess we'll get into the dream part.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, just like, again, like I said, like I'm one of those people, like, and it's something I have to tell myself too, like I know I like females, so why am I having these weird dreams? The therapy and everything coming, it's just like the memories were coming out, like this man made me give him a blowjob. Like I was having dreams about that. Like why was I having dreams about that? And then it's like, oh, it's just like it made sense, but then it didn't make sense to me in a way that I've always trusted females more than I do male, even to this day. And I couldn't understand that, but then it goes back all the way to that trauma. It's the whole judgmental thing. Like, in just certain situations, I just don't feel comfortable around certain people. If I hear something about someone, being traumatized or went through what I went through, sorry, I don't care if you did that 10 or 15 years ago to someone. We just can't be friends. I know we all deserve a second chance, and I think that's a prejudice and bias I have to work on. But from my experience, it shows like when someone does something like that, molest or abuse or rape, it's kind of a thing, like it's not a one-time thing. So it's like it's not something they're going to stop. So it's just like I just choose to like remove myself from that situation.
So when these dreams were coming to you, were you kind of this was during the time you were going to therapy, or did this kind of like was this the start of you seeking therapy?
I started having these dreams when I was probably fifth or sixth grade, and I didn't understand them. These are like dreams like I didn't understand them. Why am I dreaming about other guys? I'm not like that. So it kind of freaked me out because like it happened to my brother, and then my brother became gay. So it was like, and I'm like, no, I'm not like that. Then when it happened to my sister, she became bisexual. So it was just like, this is not normal. So it's just like, no, I know I like girls. Why am I having these dreams by guys? Why am I wondering things or stuff just popping in my head? Because I'm not watching gay porn or nothing, so I don't know why these images were popping in my head.
So it's like this part of you that kind of knew that this was really triggered by something quite dark from a dark place, and it wasn't an actual interest. Could it be possible that it was just shamed upon, the idea of homosexuality, by your great grandparents, and that's why you were fighting it?
It was my great grandma, because the minute she found out my brother was gay, she gave him like a riot act. That's a nice way of putting it. So she kind of went off on him. They've always known I've dated different girls, so it wasn't, for me. It wasn't that. It was just like I see that, and then I can't tell I'm having these images in my head, but I don't know why. To me, it was a no-win situation.
And then you mentioned when you were in militaries when it kind of all really started coming out to you. Do they provide therapy? Is that one of those kind of provisions?
If you ask for it, I didn't ask for it. I used to train it as my aggression. That was my way to get everything out during the training,
Right.
whether it was the M16 training, the grenade training, hand-to-hand combat. That's the way I got things out.
And was it during this time when you were fighting this court case of great granduncle? Were you already going to therapy at this point?
No, I had already stopped therapy. Once I left the group home, I didn't continue it. But the one thing that did happen was once the court case started, my lawyer, the suggestion was for me to start therapy so they could see that I wasn't making this up, that this was something that actually happened. So for those 3 years, is, I did go back to therapy while I was actually doing the court case. And then it helped me because it wasn't a therapist I picked. It wasn't a therapist the DA picked. It was a therapist the court picked. So it was someone who had nothing to gain.
Oh, right. That's really interesting. That makes a lot of sense. And with that unbiased, they're not really with the agenda of trying to pull a certain truth for your court case, for your court battle, but rather they're just merely trying to understand what really happened to you. And so then you're able to be more authentic and unravel the kind of things, the ordeal that had really gone on for you.
Yes.
And what kind of therapy was provided? What did that kind of look like?
Her name was Shannon, and I would meet with her 1 hour a week in her office. And she would just ask me questions. We would just talk. It was weird because this was through court. So the way the office was set up was like white walls, and then you had the metal chairs, kind of like something you would see in a movie. So that's the kind of way it was. So
Yeah.
it kind of from childhood all the way to that incident. So it's like 3 years of just unraveling stuff. Like, how did we get to this point? Remember, her recommendation was that was my last option because all the other options have failed me.
Did you ever go through anything to help you to understand or to acknowledge some of the repressed memories? Like, for example, EMDR therapy, or what was some of the ways that you kind of got these memories out?
I know one time they did hypnosis on me. Don't know what happened, but during that session, she said that's where a lot of the trauma came out. I just know it was reported to the court, and that's kind of what made the court lean more on my side. Even to this day, I don't know the full extent of what was said because that part of the case was just sealed. So there's probably other stuff that I don't even know about.
The purpose is to bring these things out for you to start doing that healing process. It was like your brain was like, no, I'm going to shut that part out. I'm just going to say what I need to say, but I'm not going to actually like bring it to your conscious mind. That it must have been pretty bad, right?
Yeah, because I remember they told me, my lawyer told me after everything had happened, like after that session. Well, he didn't tell me right away. He told me a couple weeks later. When that incident happened, you were already a ticking time bomb. Like, it was just, unfortunately, it was your great uncle, but he said it could have been anybody. Because he said you were already ready to explode. He said you held everything in for all those years, and everything just wanted to come out. And he's like, if someone would have triggered you at the wrong moment, it would have been an ugly situation. And he said it wouldn't even been their fault. It's because of everything with your great uncle and your family, just everything was just building up. You're just ready to explode.
Can you talk to me about the kind of healing that you went through after this court case was over? Everything was done.
Trying to adjust, trying to adapt to being me, trying to find myself again because you got to think for 3 years I was structured to do, kind of focus on this, couldn't do anything else. So now it's like kind of getting um, back to my life. September 11th, 2001 happened in the middle, because I was already coming up on the end of my military career. 9/11 happened. This case gets settled in March of 2002. The military is like, what do you want to do? You want to resign? You want to stay in, or you want to get out? That's kind of what saved me. Without the military, I don't know where I would be right now. And I tell people that, like, After that court case, if it wasn't for the military throwing me a lifeline, I don't know what I would have done.
Do you feel at this point when they'd asked you if you wanted to resign and you chose to, were you kind of more or less healed at this point? Were those dreams still happening? Were you still experiencing, some of the PTSD from what had happened to you when you were younger?
So here's the interesting bit, because even today I'm in therapy because after that happened, those dreams stopped. What happened next was I got different dreams. I got dreams of this man coming after me. I didn't want to close my eyes at night because when I closed my eyes, I would see his face. It was more of me feeling, I have a conscience, and it was more of me feeling remorse because, again, I knew why he wasn't on this earth. And I think, during those 3 years, that conscience started to weigh on me.
Did you kind of like re-enter therapy at this point again?
No, I stopped therapy for a long time. And to be honest, my therapy was the bottle. That's what it was at that point.
So you were drinking while at the same time in military.
Yes.
Is it one of those kind of situations where it's quite enabling in a sense where you're in an all boys club, right? Like kind of egging each other on and encouraging each other and or would you say it's quite the opposite that you were going through that experience quite on your own?
I would say both. The only people who knew what I had went through were um, upper leadership. So they knew. But anybody below that, like they didn't know nothing. They just like I was just one of the guys. I'm just drinking with you guys. But like, again, they didn't know like I'm drinking to hide my pain and sorrow.
How bad did the drinking get for you?
I wouldn't say it was bad because I pretty much only drink on Fridays and Saturdays. That's it. I wouldn't drink during the work week at all. And then I wouldn't drink and drive. That was a no-no for me.
But you still felt a lot of relief from drinking. So at that point, even though it wasn't a daily thing and it wasn't debilitating and getting in the way of your life, it was enough for you to feel this is my source of comfort.
Yes, it was. It was just something that come home on a Friday. We had a master sergeant who would call certain ones of us in his office, pull out a glass, and then start pouring us a shot of Jack Daniels. And so it started in the office.
So walk me through what happens next. How did that sort of change for you? How did you start to kind of like turn things around and cut the alcohol and start choosing healthier choices for yourself?
I think with anybody, you meet someone, and then it's like you were telling yourself, okay, I'm gonna change for this girl, but at the end of the day, you're changing for yourself, and that's kind of what happened. I think that person saw me drinking and then told me like you passed out. I have never passed out before, so that was kind of my wake up call, my red flag. Like, okay, I'm drinking too much. It was just the genuine care, and I
Yeah.
think you could tell when someone's being genuine with you, they care about you, they care about your well being. And before, nobody asked me how my day was or how are you feeling? But when that person's taking the genuine care in your life.
That's so powerful that there can be someone who can come into your life and really give you that safe space, that feeling of like you can be safe here in whatever you have to say and whatever you need to feel and experience. You can experience it to the fullest of extent in this safe space. And that can be so healing for so many people out there who have always kind of felt alone, who have always felt very unsafe, who've always felt, insecure in the place that they're in. Um, so healing to the point where it can turn your life completely around. It can make you decide to make choices and decisions for yourself that can be so helpful. And I think this is so important for our listeners that are listening to this as well to know that we all have that power to make such a strong impact.
Yes, that's exactly right. I wish we had more of that in the world. I recently told someone like, ask someone how they're doing. You will be surprised at the answer you get. Like if you don't ask, you'll never know. Our thing is we assume we know how someone feels, and like no, just ask them. Like communication is key and everything.
So that incident that happened, you'd passed out from alcohol, you were being made aware of it. What did you do? How did you do that?
You know what? Yeah, just quit cold turkey. It wasn't, and I hear all these stories and people's like, they ask me, I was like, no, I didn't have the shivers, I didn't have the sweats. But then when people ask me, I was like, I didn't drink beer, I drink hard liquor. So I said, there's a difference with that. So I was fine. Like not something I crave. For a while, I would get a shot and then drink it, and I'll be fine for like 6 months. My vice was, womanizing and lusting and not being able to commit. So like the
Mm.
alcohol is just part of it.
So you sort of like made a decision at some point to say, I'm just going to stop just going for women and for an experience with a woman for the sake of it, and I'm going to try to find someone that I can really commit to. How did you go about changing that? What did you do from that point on? How did you turn that around?
I had a friend invite me to church. That's how everything happened. Um, I remember that day because the pastor was talking about legacy, and he's like talking about people that have kids. Your kids are your legacy, and I started thinking like that was the first time in my life like I wanted to have kids. Like, just God, I do want to have kids. I do want to have a legacy, but I need the right person. I'm so thankful and grateful for that because I had to be willing and obedient to figure out why they were putting my certain parts of my life. And that was to help me mature and grow too. I'm not because of people that have been in my life.
Yeah. How are your sister and brother now?
They're good. They kind of got out of the Orange County area. I still live in Orange County. They live in different areas. My sister is the only one who actually has communication with our mother. Me and my brother cut off all communication at the end of time. Like we all have our own lives to live. If one of us needs each other, we'll always be there for each other.
Antoine, tell us a little bit about where you are now, the work that you're doing, and how are you spreading this message?
So right now I currently finished a year and a half of law school. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in human trafficking. A father of three, husband, own a clothing line. How do I spread the message? Is through our clothing line. I put motivational and inspirational sayings on our shirt, and pretty soon we're about to drop a tank top, and the tank top says, "My trauma will not define me." And um, put out a survey for it, and the survey came back overwhelming. It's a lot of people resonated with it. A lot of females resonated with that saying. The first tank top we put out, it kind of sold out. It was called "Fight for Your Legacy." People, again, they related with that message. We want people to understand, like, especially with the trauma. Everybody goes through trauma, but don't let it define who you are. I put out
Hmm.
a message today that says, "Don't let yesterday steal today's joy."
Yeah, I love that. Antoine, thank you so much for sharing your story and your vulnerability on air with us and being so truthful and honest about everything. I feel like there's so much our listeners are going to be able to take away from your experience. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure. And again, if one person could heal from it, then my job is done because I love the space that you have. And I love that people come on here to not only heal themselves, but help other people heal also and give them the tools that they've used.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Lucas, Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.